So it's not for kids.
I realize how little I write now. The computer has kind of just digitized all of my writing experience. It's kind of insane.
Oh, you mean you're actually putting like a pencil onto a piece of paper?
Yes. Taking a pen and writing on a piece of paper. Didn't realize how scuffed my handwriting was. And I think it's gotten worse because I'm not keeping up with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like looking back at my notes. I can't even read my handwriting. I used to be able to read my handwriting. So I just have to like use deduction to figure out what I'm talking about.
It's just a quintessential example of the decline of literacy rates in this country.
Yeah. Do you think like Leonardo da Vinci?
Da Vinci?
Like everybody's like, oh, he's writing in a cipher. What if he was just like really bad at writing and it got like so bad that it started looking weird, you know?
This is like the best take I think I've ever heard on the Da Vinci Code. Like, what if his writing just sucked ass and it's like, it's so bad, everyone just thinks it's a different language or something.
Yeah, we're just reading into it too much.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm taking my notes on City of Six Moons in the same notebook that I'm taking my notes about characteristics of games.
Mm-hmm.
And there's almost a metatextual layer of like, now I need to decipher the notes I wrote about City of Six Moons so I can decipher City of Six Moons.
Right.
I'm Leo DiCaprio over here playing a board game cryptology deception inception, you know.
Those are words you can say legally in English.
Welcome to Shelf Stable, a podcast celebrating board games that have stood the test of time. I'm one of the hosts, Kenny Katayama.
And I'm one of the other hosts, Tom Bowers. Today, our feature topic is Characteristics of Games, Chapter 2, the textbook by Richard Garfield, George Skaff, Elias, et al. But before we get into that, let's just talk about some stuff we've been playing recently.
Our intro kind of made it sound like there was like a third host.
I know, yeah.
And I'm the third host, Grebo. I never talk, but I'm always here.
We love you, Grebo. Yeah.
Grebo, shut the hell up.
Okay.
I mean, I know you love Grebo, but I'm sick and tired of Grebo.
I guess I shouldn't have spoken for both of us in this case, but yeah, Grebo, you're doing a great job sitting in the corner, doing your thing.
Grebo's crying.
Now he's jacking off.
Tom, I got to play The King is Dead. The original one was from 2015, but they did a second edition, and that's the one we were playing in 2020. This is designed by Pierre Sylvester and published by Osprey Games. Pierre Sylvester, notable for a lot of, trick-taking hybrids and very, like, confrontational games. He did Brian Boru. He also did, like, Tindahan/Filipino Fruit Market, which we talked about on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Shout outs to Austin. He was like, you should definitely try this. I think you'll like it. And you know what? He was right. King is Dead gave me El Grande vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot shorter though.
Can I just say real quick? It's kind of wild that like one of the biggest board games of all time is just called The Big in Spanish.
The Big. Yeah,
like I wonder if it hits different, like for Spanish speakers. They see El Grande and they're just like, okay, like the El Grande what, Yeah.
It might be like the grand one. There might be an implied
or the
one
great.
there.
I guess like the great words.
One. The King is Dead. It's an area majority game. You are vying for 3 different colors of cubes to be placed around the United Kingdom. And you are shuffling them around, adding them in different locations. And then at a certain point, when everybody passes, the location on the board that is slotted to be scored next scores. And whoever has the most there gets that location. That is the core conceit of the game. Where it gets a little edgy is that you basically only have like 7 cards at your disposal. And once you play them, that is it. So you really have to be careful about when you're going to pass and just let things happen. You have to pick your battles. It has... yes?
Oh, nothing.
Oh. It has
the challenges.
Okay.
Because you know,
has
like you only have
sort of
7 cards in your hand. It's like kind of hard to figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
Like when, you know?
Yeah, it's tricky. The really
it
interesting
sounds like
thing.
it would be challenging. I'm sorry. I'll stop fucking with you.
Holy shit. We already have a little delay going on. Like, I can't, Tom. The other interesting thing about it is there is sort of a Knizia scoring at play. So the way the game works is it ends in one of 2 ways. One way is you get through all 8 locations scoring. The other way is there's too many ties that happen. And then the French invade.
Ah, the French.
If you get through all 8 rounds, whichever color scored the most, then whoever claimed the most cubes of that color is going to win the game. However, if the French come in and invade, then whoever was the most balanced between the 3 colors, aka your lowest color, is your score. Kind of like Tigris and Euphrates. And so you kind of have to play both games and you have to suss out which way it's going to end. So even though the game is like super tight, super concise, there's like a lot to think about. It was very much a chess game. We were all sitting around like brows furrowed. The 4-player version, you actually play in 2 teams, almost like bridge, where you play with the player across from you. You can't communicate things to the other player. You still score independently, but whoever scores the highest, that team wins. And so there was a lot of like blind communication that was happening. That was also, I was like, I'm not sure if this is going to work, but it was like, it worked really well. I thought it was super interesting. If you like El Grande, this is like a no-brainer. I highly recommend playing this. It's like a shorter, tighter El Grande that has its own nuance to it. I don't think it like replaces or anything. You know, I think they both stand their own ground. I found myself being like, oh yeah, this is juicy. This is the kind of area majority game that I like.
As someone who has not yet played El Grande, I'm just thinking like, man, I ought to try out this and then try out El Grande. Or do you feel like it almost works better if you've experienced El Grande first?
I don't know. I think that this game is tighter. The King is Dead is tighter than El Grande. However, El Grande is more exciting. The actions that you get to take in El Grande feel game breaking.
I see.
So this is a little bit more minute in how things move around.
The softer, quieter El Grande.
Yeah. That was The King is Dead from 2015.
Cool game, Kenny. King is dead. King is unalived. Whatever. Yeah, I'm sure you cut all the other part out. I want to talk about Magic the Gathering again. Why am I bringing this up again? You might be wondering. We have talked about it before, but I'm going to talk specifically about Jumpstart, which is a kind of variant, but also a proprietary product of Magic the Gathering, and did not come out until 2020. So just barely entering the shelf-stable territory here. The Jumpstart concept was designed by Doug Beyer. I imagine some credit is probably owed to Paul Peterson, who designed Smash Up. Not even to mention... Oh,
yeah, definitely.
I mean, you always have to credit Richard Garfield, PhD, of course, because not only did he come up with Magic the Gathering, but he later went to design Keyforge, which I think laid some of the foundation for the possibility of Jumpstart to exist the way that it does. So Jumpstart, for those who don't know, is Wizards of the Coast's attempt at bridging the gap, essentially, between people who have never played Magic before in their life and people who want to start playing Magic. Because just sitting down for Friday Night Magic anymore is such a whirlwind of cards and chaos. Even if you didn't do that, like the premier sort of format to experience as a newcomer more or less used to be the pre-release, although I don't know if that's the case anymore. But the pre-release format has its own complexities. You're opening like these 6 random booster packs, and you have to sort of learn all these heuristics somewhat on the fly. And I mean, like, best case scenario, you have a friend with you who is going to, help you build your deck, but you're not necessarily like really understanding what you're getting into. And it's hard to kind of just walk into a pre-release solo in particular, I feel. And so Jumpstart conceptually just takes this idea of like, what if you could just open 2 booster packs of cards, slap them together, and that's your Magic deck? you can see the Smash Up influence. I do want to say, I think the concept for it being like a beginner introductory product is very smart for a number of reasons. The only thing that's surprising more than anything is that it took them this long to get here.
I do really think the thing about Paul Peterson and Smash Up plays a part here. It's like, it was just like an untapped concept, I feel like, prior to that. Yeah.
And it's kind of like Paul Peterson definitely was sort of ahead of the curve in this sense. The only thing I'll speak to, though, and maybe I'm being a bit mean here, but the reality is that like Smash Up is like a cool concept that, in my experience, did not live up to the ingenuity, if that makes sense.
I would agree.
The gameplay itself was boring, chaotic. Heads up, like 1v1, I think I said this when we talked about that game, I'd be a little more interested. But at the end of the day, like, I feel like even Paul Peterson himself, like, kind of wished it was actually just Magic the Gathering. That's at least the vibe you get from it. And then so it's great that there's a product out there like this called Jumpstart that exists and sort of enables that. And then the nice thing is that we have all the amenities now to put all your cardboard toys in plastic and then wrap those plastic wrap cardboard pieces inside other types of plastic so that you can sort of reopen and then close up the packs indefinitely, and the cards will last forever because they're sealed up in plastic. So, you know, you can build a cube out of it is what I'm trying to get at of all the, and keep all the packs as they are. A long time ago when we talked about Magic, I talked about borrowing someone else's Jumpstart cube. And so now I'm, you know, getting into putting my own together because of this new set, admittedly. Full disclosure, new set alert, new game alert, Avatar: The Last Airbender. They got me. Okay. Hit me right in the nostalgia with this one. I'm loving it though, and I feel no shame yet.
I like the Jumpstart format. I dabbled with turning the existing cube that I have into a sort of Jumpstart, and I was surprised at how well it worked. I think it's a format that just, if you build the right cards into it, can create some really interesting dynamics and some really interesting decks without requiring all the deck building that can be really daunting for a newer player. This model that allows more seasoned players to play with newer players, I don't know how much teeth it has over time, because, you know, once you've kind of experienced a lot of things, it's still kind of like, you know, I'm not convinced that the modularity of mashing two things persists for that much time, but like, that's not the goal either, right? You're like trying to get somebody, aka jump started, like, yeah. And for that, I think it's really effective.
Well, and I think what I like really too is that you can kind of experience it any way you want. So for Helena, she's been telling me, like, I wish that you convinced me to play Magic more often, because it feels like every time I have to come back to the table for Magic, I've low-key forgotten like all the intricacies. And then there's a lot of like rules baggage to sort of hold on to mentally. What she likes, I guess, is that she can play the same cards over and over. But then for me, who's more interested in exploring all of the themes, like I can, you know, swap things out. So I can play powerful Azula, which are the themes of the two individual decks. And then I can switch it up and just play as a wise Iroh, for example, and like have those diversity of experiences. And then even for the other player, it's like fun, I would imagine, on some level, to like see the diversity of strategy that is available in Magic. So it's like, it's like a very ingenious way. It works really well to bring someone into the entire gamut of experiences that you can have as a beginner in Magic.
That was Jumpstart Magic the Gathering, I guess from 2020?
Kind of. And 1993.
Tom, let's go building, okay?
Okay.
We're not gonna be doing any of that Minecraft bullshit, though. We're gonna be going back to Egypt. And we're gonna be building some beautiful architecture for Cleopatra herself. This is Cleopatra and the Society of Architects from 2006, designed by Bruno Cathala and Ludovic Maublanc. Ludovic Maublanc, notable for having designed Cyclades Nuts, as well as Draftosaurus with Antoine Bauza, and then also Cash and Guns. We talked about Cash and Guns in the past, so.
Okay, I was wondering where I recognized the name. He almost seems like he's like like Jay-Z of board games in a way. Like he worked with like Bruno Cathala, and he worked with Antoine Boza. It's just like he's like the featured artist, you know, on all these other games.
I guess, yeah. This is published by Days of Wonder, and I think Days of Wonder has a reputation for having ushered in a new round of enhanced components. Like when Ticket to Ride and Memoir came out, people were like, these pieces are way nicer than anything I've seen. Of course, since then, we've had like Stonemaier games and we've had a lot of Kickstarter things. But I'd say the wave before that was Days of Wonder. However, I will say that this is an example where Days of Wonder maybe leaned in too much or got typecast, because just up front from a component perspective, this game is like literally toys the game. You're building the Cleopatra's temple, but like what normally would have been cardboard chits that get added to a central board, you literally have like obelisks that are erected and these sphinx little things that get lined up. This box weighs like 4 pounds and a ton of these plastic pieces that are not like Kickstarter. It's like hard to say. It's like more like a toy that you would get at a store.
Like you feel like the component quality just is like higher than Kickstarter. Is that what you're getting at? Or
it's like more robust but less detail, if that makes sense. Like it's not minis, it's more like chunky pieces.
Yeah.
But there's no dexterity element. Like it's almost like a dexterity game where there's no dexterity elements, if that makes sense.
That's where I was surprised, actually. I thought that's where this was going.
It's funny I mentioned Ticket to Ride. The way the game plays is you take cards from a central area that correspond to different resources you can spend. And then almost Catan-like, you can build the different pieces of the temple by spending those cards. There's like recipes that you follow, similar to Catan. When you build the different pieces, not only are you erecting specific plastic pieces that go in certain areas, like the walls versus the floor and things like that, but also they score differently. For example, the walls score for every tile that was already built that touches that wall. And then the tiles score by covering up certain squares that have bushes on them. So they all have like different scoring and different recipes, and it becomes a game of manipulating what cards you get and how you spend them effectively to get points. Up until now, I've described kind of a pretty standard recipe fulfillment Euro game. There are a few wrinkles in there that I thought were cute and enjoyable. So the first one is a lot of things you do that are very powerful help propel you forward, but give you corruption. There are these very strong event cards that you can play, but they give you corruption. There's also a bidding thing that happens halfway through the game, or like every third of the game, where if you don't bid enough, you get corruption. If you bid the most, you get to get rid of corruption. And in high society fashion, when you end the game, everybody reveals how much corruption they have in their secret pool, and whoever has the most corruption gets fed to the crocodile and just gets axed from the game. So it's not enough to have a high score. You have to also not have taken the most corruption, which I think is always kind of a juicy addition to a game. The second wrinkle that I thought was notable is that the cards that you get to take, it's not quite a Winston draft. It's more like there's 3 piles. You take from one of the 3 piles, and then you add cards to all 3 piles. If there's a particular pile that's not very juicy right now, it'll just keep compounding until it gets juicy enough, and then you get to take a pile that has like 5 cards in it.
It was an information face down.
So here's the fun thing with that. You shuffle the deck at the beginning of the game, then you cut it in 2, flip one of the sides over, and shuffle the cards with half of the cards flipped over. So what happens is when you deal cards out, half of them are going to show you what they are, and the other half are going to be face down. And I was like, this is cool. I like this. This is a nice little touch.
It makes me think of Seven Wonders, the duel, I mean.
Yeah, it's a little Seven Wonders duelish. Those cute things, right? The high society thing and the half of the cards being face down and that being very elegantly worked into the setup, I think were the standout parts of this. The rest of the game was just like very, I don't want to be condescending, because I don't think that's the sentiment that we had around the table. It was just like an enjoyable recipe fulfillment game. I think that's a fair way to assess it. Like, we had a good time, we enjoyed it. Outside of those two things, which I do think were standouts, it was, oh, okay, this is this kind of game kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's really fun as a one and done experience. It's maybe like, pretty high up there as far as a one and done. For one, like the component quality, like it is very impactful when you see it on a table. I would say if you're listening and you're curious, definitely look up some pictures of this. But past the first game, I feel like it would just be a nuisance. And I almost wish the game came with like cardboard stand-ins that didn't make this game kind of a pain to set up and tear down and also manipulate as you're playing the game. I think I'd rather play Ticket to Ride over this.
Considering the pedigree here, like that kind of tracks from my experience of the other games. Yeah, I'm curious to check it out more than anything just for its table presence.
I mean, I gotta say, the table presence is there.
What would you pick between this and Cash and Guns? Just out of curiosity.
They're so different. I don't know. They're both games that I feel like have a lot of novelty, but then you don't like want to come. Maybe that's like the common through line here.
Right. Because that's what I was thinking about as you mentioned it. I think I would like Cash and Guns more if it were like half as long. So maybe I should just try playing it like that and see how it feels.
Yeah.
Well, that's Cleopatra and the Society of Architects from 2006. Speaking of nothing related to that whatsoever, I've been playing Twice as Clever, but I love the German name.
Transition.
Doppel so clever. Doppelt so clever. I think there's like a T in there. From 2019. This is designed by Wolfgang Warsch and published at least in English by Stronghold Games.
Yeah, Wolfgang Warsch, notable designer of Quacks and the Taverns of something, Tiefenfall.
Yeah, Quacks and the Taverns of something. He also did Twice as Clever. And actually, this is like the sequel, I guess, to some other game that I think is just called So Clever.
That's So Clever.
Or That's So
very
Clever.
Clever.
Something like that. I know there's also like Triple So Clever, and then there's like some other thing with the number 4, I think.
Too fast, too clever.
Yeah, and actually, like the 4th one is technically the 6th one in Germany, but it's like a whole thing. Anyway,
that's pretty clever. That's the first one.
That's pretty clever of them to have named it that. So I've only ever played Twice as Clever, and this is a roll and write game. And I think Taylor, notable friend of the podcast, said it best, which is that this is roll and writing stripped all the way down to the bare metal. And that's exactly right. It's like you roll the dice, but that's it. That's So Clever is just, it's like 6 simultaneous mini games where each one scores points in different ways. But the trick is that in order to progress along the progressions of these mini games is that you have to pick from the dice you rolled, and there's 6 different colors, of course. Whatever the number is, all the dice that are lower than it will be out for the second round of choosing, and you're always trying to choose 3 dice ultimately on your turn. And then after you've picked your 3 that you like, you offer the rest up to your opponents on a silver platter. Quite literally, if you actually have the whole box with you, it's got like this silver dish on it for you to put stuff on. And they pick one of those unused dice to continue to fill up their boards. So I jokingly referred to this as interaction. I was like, it's a roll and write with interaction. And then when it was revealed what the interaction was, the only person I haven't played it before, Taylor, was like, I see. So overall, it seemed that she will not be returning to this one. But all I'll say to this is it almost works best as a solo game. And this is something that was said at the table by the person who brought the game, Holly. I kind of agree. I think it functions a lot like Balatro, in that if you have like the mobile app, it's just like a make number go up game, and you're just trying to like sort of combo moves together in the most convincing way possible.
I think I agree with that take too. It's like a game that's most enjoyable solo, where you get that dopamine hit of like this chains into this thing, which chains into this thing. I used to actually own this game specifically in the series because I enjoyed it. But after playing it quite a bit, I feel like I was like, played that. And if I'm gonna do something like that, I think that I really enjoy Hadrian's Wall, and so I didn't feel a justification of owning Hadrian's Wall and this. I think it really scratches that itch of like cascading triggers. So if you're into that, that's where you can find those.
Yeah, there's something enjoyable to that. I'll admit that the sort of, there's like a lack of theme, and that either works for you or it doesn't, as far as like just kind of being honest about the abstract nature of roll and writes. The one thing that's kind of interesting about this compared to other roll and writes is that it's doing something different with the turn structure, because most roll and writes nowadays, in my experience at least, it's like you roll a center pile and everyone plays off of the same dice. And that's typically the thing that makes it interesting. What's different here, right, is that you have these options on your turn, and then you leave behind these secondary options for everyone else to take. And it would be almost impossible to like actually try and manipulate the outcomes of the dice such that your opponents benefit less from what you leave behind. I could imagine like a couple who plays this a bazillion times, and they are like reaching that level of strategy where they're like, oh yes, and I'm also leaving behind like only the worst shit options of all time. So there's something nice about this one. I don't know what to it's in a weird place, because it's like I'm never unhappy to play this, but it's never like top of the list either. So it's in that nebulous space where I'm not the one pulling it out, but I'm not I'll sit down for it.
That was Twice as Clever in 2019.
100 games to play before you die.
Okay, Genny, it's time to do the part of the episode where we talk about the 100 games that you are required by law to play before you turn 100 years old within a month from now. Game number 54 on that list is Acquire from 1963, designed by Sid Sackson, grandfather of board games, and published by Avalon Hill. Kenny, why is this on the list?
This game's on the list because it's a bona fide classic. It's been a while since we had like an evergreen. This is part of the
a true classic
game history.
True classic game.
Classic. Part of the reasons because Sid Sackson is one of the important historical figureheads for board gaming as a whole. Really influential, and I would say this is one of his most notable games. I think this is also a really exemplary game when it comes to talking about buy low, sell high, and just like overall economic manipulation that happens, like stock manipulation and things like that. We do also have like a Cube Rails games somewhere on this list. This stands on its own because there's more speculation, I would say. And just there's a lot of like, this is the focus. There's not that other aspect of laying rail and things like that. So Acquire, you are investing in these different companies that are building up on the board. You don't have full control over what you can place where, but you do have kind of a hand of different spots, different hotel locations, and you're building out these hotel companies. And once they connect, one is going to eat the other. And so you want to figure out how much you want to invest in a certain hotel, and if you want to sell the shares or convert the shares when one hotel gets eaten by the other. Sometimes you want to intentionally make that happen, and other times you want to avoid it as long as possible. It's a very like pure game. I wouldn't say it's a very simple game. There's kind of a lot of intricacies to how the acquiring happens. But it's also not a game that would be too difficult to play with like folks who are less familiar with board games. A lot of people say this is like a straight up better game than Monopoly. And I can see like the overlap with Monopoly, but I don't know that I would put this in front of people who play Monopoly.
I would.
You would?
Kinda.
I feel like people who are looking to play Monopoly are looking more for the roll and move stuff happens aspect versus the buying property and selling and things. Even though that's the ultimate goal of Monopoly, but I don't think that's what they're going in with it. And that's why I'm a little hesitant about that comparison, but I understand why people make it.
The reason I think I'd put it in front of Monopoly heads is because it fits neatly into the sort of old-fashioned, shall we say, experience of board games, which is that it's relatively simple overhead as far as rules teach into straightforward gameplay that is merciless in its almost cutthroat nature. And it has some things in common with the experiences of Scrabble. And of course, like thematically with Monopoly, very little mechanically is shared with Monopoly other than paper money, I guess. And so it because of those familiar elements, I think this is, in a weird sort of way, like a good gateway game into... It's not really a gateway into modern game design per se, but it is, I feel like, a consciousness raising game for those who haven't yet to play it.
Yeah, I guess my only trepidation there is it might misfire and then you've completely shot your chance of converting someone. You
can't put this in front of people who, if they are really soured about getting straight up eliminated, people who will get completely tilted and angry or at a result like that, it doesn't work. So you would think I'd hate it, but because it doesn't last for 4 hours like Food Chain Magnate, I really like this game by comparison.
I will say this about the Monopoly thing. If they're like a true Monopoly head, like they've studied Monopoly, then I think it's an excellent recommendation. Like if they're actually thinking about with the auction and things like that, if it's just people who are playing it at a family night or a friend night because they are looking for a board game, I would not be like, actually, have you tried Acquire? Like, yeah, I will concede that if they're like diehard Monopoly fans and they haven't played this, that's a great opportunity.
I don't know how many of those types of people you're running into, but I've never met one.
I don't think it's a common thing.
Yeah.
When we did the live episode where we talked about replacements, was this your pick for Monopoly?
No. Did I pick Pan Am?
You might have, yeah. Yeah, I think Pan Am is a little complicated, but it might be friendlier.
It is and it isn't. It's interesting how much of the DNA is shared with each of these. The one thing I think that is neat about Acquire in a certain sense is that you always want to be in a position where you're buying what is just about to get bought out. And in that way, you could republish this game today as Private Equity Simulator. I feel like people would sort of love to hate that conceptually.
That was Acquire by Sid Sackson.
Okay, time to fucking stop yapping. Time to get into the real meat and potatoes of the podcast, the part of the episode where we get serious, we get into the weeds, we go deep, we dig down and read an actual fucking book by a guy who made like a lot of games.
I don't want to brag, but we like read books on the show, so...
Yeah, we're not your average podcast. We're not just here farming Reddit posts in order to generate ad revenue. We actually go to original sources and look up the literature, and I wear glasses. I don't.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, actually, that's a lie. I'm sorry. I just said that for content.
I was going to look at my phone before going to bed, but instead I took my notepad out and got this book and started taking notes. The next morning, I was going to take the elevator to go up to the floor of my work, but I took the stairs instead.
Holy shit. Yeah.
I was going to get a soda with my lunch, but I was like, 1 water cup, please. I don't want to brag.
No
but,
way. And did you actually ask for salad instead of fries too?
Yeah. I was like, do you have anything else other than fries for the side? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they say they're considering me for the Mensa program.
That tracks. Okay. Thank you for those of you out there who are actually trying to follow along with this somewhat sporadic book club and actually read Chapter 2. Chapter 2 of Characteristics of Games is called Multiplayer Games. And it focuses on the pitfalls and shortcomings, perhaps, and also the specifics about what multiplayer games kind of end up being. And it's interesting because I think there are some ways in which this chapter is being almost purposefully reductive, but I still find it fascinating that I don't know if I disagree with their point. And I'm being vague here, but do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, you're hinting to the weird logic math that keeps coming up. I'll give you some examples. Races are multiple single-player games glued together. It's like race equals single-player plus other single-player, and then they said brawlers are 2-player plus 1 extra player. King making equals targeted interaction plus logical elimination.
Right.
Yeah, we'll go into this as we go, but like, I just thought it was funny that there was a common through line through this chapter of like, this equals this plus this.
Yeah, you can see the math background showing, I guess. I didn't even put that together, but now that you're mentioning it, it's like, it's totally like, yeah, it's just like, if you're experiencing this, it's probably a combination of this plus this multiplied by silly. Yeah. I do think it's kind of funny. At the beginning of the chapter, one of the notes I made was that they only ever reference 2 games, and it's like World of Warcraft and fucking Robo Rally. Like, they love to bring up World of Warcraft at any given moment, and then similarly with Robo Rally, which I just find it like really funny, I guess, that they feel it applies so much.
It's interesting how little they reference Magic, given that all 3 of them were involved with Magic's development.
Yeah, it's funny that they don't mention Magic, but they can't stop themselves talking about Robo Rally, which is something that Garfield designed. I was jump scared almost by the pandemic mention. Not the event from 2020, but the board game from 2007, where it's like, because they almost seemed like they went out of their way in chapter 1 to not mention Pandemic as a cooperative game, but it does come up in this chapter.
We like talked about that in the previous episode of like, it was a little strange that they overemphasized Reiner Knizia's Lord of the Rings, but they didn't talk about Pandemic, which had already been released. And then sure enough, chapter 2, they're like, oh, by the way, Pandemic. And we're like, what? Wait, why wasn't this in chapter 1?
I still don't really understand the thinking there. But then it's funny too, because in the same sentence that they say Pandemic, they also mention again the Lord of the Rings cooperative.
No, it's Lord of the Rings, the board game. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
It sounds like we're like complaining a lot. I think it's more just we're poking fun at certain things, but like I have been really enjoying reading this book. I think the thing that I'm getting the most out of it is an ability to verbalize things that I know internally or subconsciously about games, but that I haven't really sat and like, I guess, created a lexicological understanding of. Is that even a word, what I just said?
Lexicological is a word, I think.
It is? Okay. You know, create a lexicon around there. I don't know why I'm overcomplicating things, but
you're combobulating too many words there.
A good example is like the atom. You know, I think we've used that since then.
Right.
And there's more of those to come here. So let's jump into it. What was the first thing that you had noted?
Well, let's just jump into it. What I found interesting is what you kind of said earlier, right? Is that all games with 3 or more players are either a race, which is basically a stack of single player games, set down in front of everyone, and everyone is just trying to win the race. And the form of the race can take whoever scores the most points wins, in which case everyone is functionally just moving up a track, whether it's visible or not. And then after some amount of time, we see who moved the furthest on the track. That does describe a vast majority of games in a vague sense. Or
the first person to meet a condition in the race. That's the other sub thing. If there's no, if there's no like just overall score.
Yeah. So it's either like limited by time and then you just see who got the farthest, or it's limited, or it ends when someone hits some specific objective, right? Yeah. And then the other one was brawls, which is that like people are sort of actively interacting with each other in order to try and take each other out in some way.
Yeah, and they emphasize that like not all brawls require player elimination, but like there is oftentimes like some kind of like zero sum aspect to them where you have to directly affect others to get ahead.
Which basically boils down to every game is either Mario Kart or Smash Bros, and there is no in between.
Every game is basically kicker or flying.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thought work going on. So I did find it interesting that it, like I said, it's almost like reductionist. I don't think that's what they're trying to do necessarily. They're just trying to kind of point out that when they say like it's a multiplayer game where it's just three single player games stapled together.
Thomas Bowers is like, I find it a little weird that they would reduce a facet of board gaming to two things.
Not weird. I'm curious if their objective is to illuminate the similarity between all these games, or if it's more just that they want a way to begin to describe the differences. You know what I mean? But it does almost make it feel like just every game is like the same game with a different theme.
They did note that some games don't really elegantly fit into either of these, and some are very like fluid in terms of like overlapping or having some ground in both. The one that they highlighted the most was poker, and they were like, if you think about it, like, what do you put poker as? Like, it's not really clear because oftentimes there's not an objective that's tied to that like race idea. But there's also not like elimination per se, or it's almost like the two float between each other. So,
and it's not very targeted, which that was, I think that I'm glad you're bringing this up, because that was like the thing that I found the most interesting is that in poker, it becomes a thing where people only lose when they sort of volunteer themselves into the ring, right? It's like if you don't actually bet on the community cards in Texas Hold'em and sort of like, you know, sort of make the call, right? You're going to lose your chips because of the blinds and the ante or whatever. But like, you can never get like totally knocked out unless it's like a tournament something, right? If you don't actually sort of voluntarily step up and take the gambit, right? So
they have this concept of like targeted interaction, which is like you specifically pick somebody to get a disadvantage or an advantage, and that's like part of the game. And I think poker you can't target someone. I mean, you can to
in a
certain
direct
extent, but
way.
Not in a direct way. Like they have to be in the running first for you to target them, which I thought was interesting. It also made me realize that Cosmic Encounter is kind of like poker in the most weird way, in a very like everything is trick taking kind of way. Like Cosmic Encounter has an overlap with poker that I never realized until I read this chapter.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about Cosmic Encounter, and I kind of want to play it again for a number of reasons. But yeah, fun fact that I know is that Cosmic Encounter is a game that Garfield has mentioned personally as having like influenced him a lot. And he didn't like it the first couple of times he played it. It wasn't until like the third experience that he felt like it really illuminated itself. And it's what got the ball rolling apparently about thinking, how could I make something so fundamentally asymmetric that players actually come with their own pieces to the game? And that's basically where the trading card game came from.
Oh, that's really interesting.
So funny though that you're talking about Cosmic Encounter, because I think it slots very neatly into the thought exercise that they brought up in this, which is that a lot of interactive brawls end up being what I think they called the chip taking game, where it's like the gameplay is essentially like I point at someone and they lose a chip, and then whoever like still has a chip left, like if someone loses all their chips, they're knocked out. If that's all the game is, then someone is going to win if they're like the most persuasive, you know, sexiest, most rizzed up Rizzler in the room. But as soon as that happens like once, now everyone is aware that they are the Rizzler. And so they will like pick on that player, basically like forcing them into losing like every single time they play the chip taking game.
If that's the core, then the interesting thing in these games is like, how can you affect the game from a skill perspective in ways that transcend just it being a chip taking game? And then also, how can you obfuscate the chip taking so that it's not clear who the Rizzler is?
Right.
That's their words, right? Not ours. They definitely use the Rizzler.
The like second edition of this book. I'm going to keep going with that for sure. I think the thought exercise that they added to this that I liked the most conceptually was like, imagine you point at someone, you target someone and you go into a game of chess. And then it's like whoever wins the game of chess, if the player who targeted you like wins, you lose 2 chips. but if they lose, you only lose 1 chip. So it's like skill is relevant, but if you are being targeted at an overwhelming rate, you'll still pretty much guaranteed lose. Even though like strategically, like if you were a great chess player,
if you were Kasparov, you would still lose this game, even if you would win every match of chess.
Right. Because all the players would gang up on you.
Yeah, and you would lose 1 chip instead of 2, but that one person wouldn't be able to take people out by just making everyone else lose 2 chips.
And I found that an interesting way of sort of thinking about these games that sort of prioritize or highlight the interactivity between players, and they sort of allow for this because, yeah, if you make it like too easy to just sort of take each other down and really block them from taking good game actions, experienced players will just end up getting dogpiled a lot. It didn't seem like there was a good remedy for that other than sort of either obfuscating how well someone is doing during the course of a game or making it less possible to just completely punch them down.
Yeah, exactly.
Allowing them ways to catch up.
The book then goes on into a section about player elimination. Well, first of all, they say oftentimes it can be unpleasant if it's not handled well. They talked about like self-elimination, like reasons to concede, because there's no way for you to functionally win, or like the game is over to a certain extent. And they also talk about reasons not to concede. I thought this part is very anecdotal, but I thought it was kind of funny of like, they listed the 3 main reasons that people would not concede when they should. Right. And they do not know that they've lost, which is like the most fair in their opinion. The second one is they just like, they refuse to end the game early, either on principle of wanting to finish the game or because they're like, they're
digging their heels in to sort of screw the other person over. And they mentioned this happens a lot online. And I don't even think they were necessarily thinking about how irritating it is on like chess.com specifically.
Oh, yeah. It's funny because at the time, the analogy they're making is like Dota, like the first Dota. That's
the hide the farm stuff.
Yeah, they were basically like, this type of antisocial behavior is most common in real-time games and notably Dota.
Yeah, and it used to be, I don't know if you know about this, but it's like, it used to be the case, I think, in Age of Empires? Yeah. In multiplayer, like, death matches or whatever, someone would just, like, squirrel away, like, a really tiny piece of their infrastructure so that it would be, like, it would take so long to find that you could get timed out and still lose the match or something like that, or maybe end up in a tie. I don't know the specifics, but I just think that's so funny.
I think that's really funny too, yeah.
Yeah, but they did eventually, I think, fix that by just like exposing eliminated players, like all their stuff.
So then they go into the sister topic to the player elimination, which is like the level of interactivity. I think this directly plays into whether people are done or not. They talk about how different games are going to have different levels of interaction. At a very high level, races are less interactive than brawls. But even within them, you have races that are high interaction, where you can often push or affect things for others, versus races where you don't. An example that they give is when you're, running a marathon, or I think they do like swimming, for example. Oftentimes there's not a lot you can do other than just have like that push your luck aspect of, do I exhaust myself further to get a little bit ahead at this point because I'm behind? But there's no like you can actually push someone over. Yeah, you stay in your lane. Versus games where you have direct control, you can affect what the other person is doing. Yeah, on the brawl side, I think just everything is pretty heavy interaction as a whole. I mean, I guess there's some games where you might only be incentivized once in a while, but I'd say for the most part, they're generally considered interactive. And then they differentiate between general or blind interaction versus targeted interaction. They spend quite a bit of time talking about targeted interaction. I don't know if you want to talk about what that means.
Well, unfortunately, the funny thing is I think we sort of covered it already with the chip taking.
I guess. Yeah, that is the chip taking thing. Yeah. So, yeah. Targeted interaction is basically the chip taking.
They go in depth about like how much of multiplayer targeted games is just, the chip taking game, with extra steps a lot of the time. It sort of depends. And so the counterbalance is, sort of restricting the ability for players to be capable of gaming up. One of the things they mentioned in that in particular was like adjacency. Like with Risk, for example, you can't just gang up on one specific player necessarily because you can only attack or affect people who are like directly next to you.
Yeah.
And so restrictions such as that make it impossible to like target the same players as many times as possible are ways to sort of mitigate the problems that can arise.
Yeah, I thought that was a good call out. One way to mitigate the chip taking is to make it so you can't just pick anyone to be affected, and therefore people have a certain shield if they set themselves up in a certain way. That can also lead to consequences, which get talked about a little bit later. The unintentional effect of blind kingmaking. We'll talk about kingmaking in a second here, but I think that plays a part here. Sometimes when games have those limitations on who can attack who, like in Risk, then there can be some blind kingmaking where an inexperienced player is accidentally giving an advantage to the only player that's adjacent to them, for example. Another example of this is like if you play clockwise around the table, like Seven Wonders, for example, there might be some blind kingmaking in that you have like a new player to your right that keeps passing you all these good cards that they should be denying you or something like that. Kingmaking, as we hinted to at the beginning, targeted interaction plus logical elimination. So targeted interaction, we already talked about, the chip taking. Logical elimination, I don't think we mentioned this one, but this is when you're not straight up eliminated from the game, but you look at the board and there's nothing that you can do. We kind of like talked about it without mentioning the term. In other words, you are in a kingmaking position if you can't win, but you have effect on who can win. And they said this is typically bad.
Right. It ultimately just often leads to scenarios where sort of drama can be created because like the rationale that someone can give for why, they are taking one game action or another can be so arbitrary that someone who's trying to play the game with some sort of integrity of the game.
Let's say somebody made a pretty like mean move early in the game, and later on a player that was not involved with that scummy move just decides like, oh, well, I didn't like when you did that, so I'm going to like give it to the other person that's in the running. Some folks would say that's a perfectly valid aspect of the social collateral that plays within that particular game, while others would say like, hey, you weren't directly affected by that. Like you can't use that as a metric for whether or not this person wins or not. And there would definitely be disagreements about that, even amongst the same group of people at a table. So
yeah, a lot of, I think the conversation around kingmaking ended up relating itself back to just politics as they described it in board games in general. I love the fact, because I'm looking at the book now, on page 51, they just literally have a list of strategies found in
side effects
games.
may cause.
Yeah, it's just like this bullet point list where kingmaking is one of them, but then it's also like hurting the player who last hurt you, parentheses, revenge, in case you didn't know. I also love like offering out of game benefits. You'll have to walk home.
Lying was, I think, the first one on the list. Yeah.
Cajoling, whining, or begging other players not to hurt you. Yeah.
I think it's crazy that they put whining, because like I personally would never whine ever in a game.
Right, yeah. Famously
never whine ever in a game that has negotiation. There's a very rude, I would say, impersonation of me that people make at the table where they're like, why would you do that to me? I'm literally the person that's losing the most at the table. And they use this voice, which like, I can only imagine I actually sound like that. You know how your like own voice doesn't sound like that to other people, but like without consulting each other, everybody always goes to like represent me. So I'm like, shit, I guess that's what I sound like. But like,
what I think is so funny is like you kind of have mastered the sad sack woe is me like performance. Like we'll play something like werewolf and you'll be like oh, see, everyone's kind of just picking on me right here, and you sometimes I swear you almost look like you're about to cry, and then you're like, yeah, I was the werewolf, like, you know, and everyone's just like, God damn it, I knew it and I fell for it again. You know, I think after like the third time, like the sympathy's gone.
It is funny when there's like a new player at the table and they're like, oh no, I think we're being a little too hard on Kenny. And then everyone else just like goes like, no, like don't worry about him.
It's like, fine. Oh, you think that? Well, then that's how I know he's the werewolf in this case. And then the funny thing is, like, this will be the one time where you're not, and you're just like, no, guys, seriously. And like, you just can't sound convincing anymore.
Literally the boy who cried wolf.
The boy who cried werewolf. Although I guess you're the boy who cried villager in this case. After they talk about kind of like the problems that politics can cause, they also have like the advantages of politics. I think this is probably like one of the more insightful sections, if I can say that, which is that political games tend to be exciting to the very end. The lead will change many times as each new winner is picked on in turn, which I think describes King of Tokyo, which had not, I don't believe, come out yet, as something that I know gets brought up a lot that people really like, is that there's literally always someone on top of the hill and then everyone's like punching them down. Now there's a new person on top of the hill, and it just keeps going in like that cycle, but it's, I get allegedly fun. I don't know if I've ever played a full game of it.
Yeah, it's fun. To that note, they talk also about situations where it actually might be detrimental to go after the leader, and it makes more sense to punch downwards. I don't know if you mentioned that.
I liked this one because it once again was like, they were like using percentages and being like, if you do the math, actually, it was something where like player A has a certain percentage chance to win. I think it's like 60. B has 50. C has 40.
It was if B goes after A, they think they would have the best chance, but actually it would only marginally change things. Whereas like if they just punched downwards and went for C, they would actually make their chances much higher than A. And so that's the best play, but it doesn't look like that at first blush.
Yeah, I'll have to be thinking about that if I'm ever like playing a game where I'm notably in second place and it's like, I could win or not, like, you know, and I have like kind of two options to make. It's like, actually, I'll just take more from the player who's already down. That's the takeaway.
Yeah, it's very antithetical to like how we play games.
It sort of is how I've played Coup before, which now that I'm talking about it is literally like the chip taking game. In Coup, you, I think, have whinged at me for this specifically. Where it's like a player has like, you know, one of their cards eliminated already, so one more and they're out. But there will be two other players that have two. And like, I've killed the player who's already halfway out of the game. And they go like, why would you do this to me? The other person has two cards. Now you're getting rid of poor old me. And I go, yeah. Because now it's one less threat to deal with.
I don't think the math plays out in that scenario, though. The percentages don't match. But it has.
I've literally done it in front of you before. Where it ended up being the right choice. It was so good.
You didn't win, though. I don't think you've ever won in one of those situations.
I always win, Q. I don't know what you're talking about.
The best play is not to go for the losing player or go for the player that still has the 2 health. I think the best play is to threaten to go for the losing player unless they strike a deal with you, and then go for the player that has the 2 health.
Yeah, you might have a point.
Because you're like, what will you do for me so that I don't kill you right now? And they don't have to like uphold that, but at least I don't know. To me, that's the best move to do in those scenarios. I won't take your chip out if you don't take mine. And then it's like...
Right. Now you're just playing Twilight Imperium.
Yeah.
Another thing that I wrote a note down on, there was a sentence that I specifically wrote down, which was, Monopoly used to live in the party game space. And I was just like, yeah, I think I agree with that generally, but I'm like, if that's the case, all the more reason that people should switch to Monopoly Deal, because it's like an actual party game.
Yeah, can you imagine playing Monopoly at a party? Jesus.
honestly. Actually, I can for some weird reason. Like, I think that would be my kind of party. Like, if there were a bunch of people there and they weren't going to be playing board games with me. Well, it's like if I went to a party and it's just like people doing party things and then someone whipped out Monopoly, I'd be like, hell yeah, let's get this going. And then I would mansplain the actual rules with like the auctioneering and stuff. And then
this is where we differ. Like, I would rather do party things than play Monopoly. Are you serious right now? You
do party favors before playing Monopoly is what you're saying.
I'd rather play cup ball or cup or whatever the hell they're doing than play Monopoly. Like I think your brain is literally cooked, Tom, if you're saying that if 3 people are like, do you want to play Monopoly like at a party? Then you're like, yes, I can't wait to explain the real rules to them. Like, are you being legit right now or is this for content?
No, wasted Tom at the party. Shit-faced Tom at the party seeing Monopoly getting whipped out on the garage floor, with then beer pong going behind. Like I'm there. I would go to this kind of fucking party. I don't know what to tell you. I'm a little too old, I think. I think like the next morning I would be full of regret. The 2 of us are talking about this like we've been to a party recently. I think the last party I went to was like 13 years ago. Speak for yourself. I went to like a Halloween party that was akin to this a few years ago.
Yeah, I think like we still do parties, but our parties have like a cheese plate, Oh
my God. We're already getting like so much shit for like spending way too much on sushi one time. Now you make it sound like, oh, we only ever go to parties with hors d'oeuvres. Did you know that I'm being considered for the Mensa Society?
It's like Colby Jack. It's not like brie. Like don't get it twisted.
In your defense, no, there still is a cheese plate. It's just cheap cheese from Costco.
Yes, literally.
Don't get the wrong idea.
I'm just saying, like, the vibe of the parties we go to is a little different from like the college rager.
Generally. I keep thinking about the time where I made a big Chungus cake for my birthday and tried to invite everyone I knew. I'm like, I should have made that an annual tradition. And like just every year I'm calling Pastry Perfection saying, give me a big Chungus cake, please.
Do you remember the Among Us Someone's Turning 7 cake?
Oh, you just reminded me. Oh, I found it at a thrift store. It's a box of Among Us party favors. I still need to do something with this. Cut this out of the episode so that no one in our Discord knows about this.
The surprise, yeah.
I'm kidding. Like, you can leave it in, but Among Us party, one day.
I think an Among Us party in 2026 is gonna hit so hard. The time is ripe, We'll
watch the Minecraft movie. What else needs to happen at this event? What we should do is make everyone come up with 30 minutes of YouTube videos that they reference all the time, which might only be a problem that 4 of us have. And then we as a group
a mega
have to
playlist?
Watch. Yeah.
Wait. How many people are in this group?
20 minimum.
So each person comes up with 30 or it's collectively 30 minutes?
Each person has their own 30 minutes of meme content.
20 times 30?
10 hours. That's
600 minutes.
10-hour party.
10-hour party where we're only sitting down and watching a bunch of meme YouTube videos. Okay.
Yes, 10-hour YouTube watch party bookended by a Minecraft movie.
The last section of this chapter is called Teamwork. And they talk about cooperative games as well as team-based games. And there's another math equation here. Cooperative games equals team games plus solo games. I'll give everybody a second to take that in. Team games plus solo games. But it does make sense when you think about it. Solo, you're playing against the game, but then you have the coordination of a team game. They talk about asymmetrical aspects of that often play a role, but the way they manifest themselves can be different. So if you remember to chapter 1, there's this concept of systemic, which are rules based, in the rules of the game, versus agential, which are social constructs. And they say that some roles in cooperative games are systemic and some are agential. A good example is In like Pandemic, you actually have different abilities for each of the players. So that's a systemic aspect. But then when you're playing like a lot of shooting games, for example, maybe everybody has at their disposition all the guns.
Like in Counter-Strike Go, for example.
Exactly,
you're on a team. Everyone has the same loadouts to choose from.
Yeah, but some people are going to act on certain roles. Or like sports, right? Like sometimes there's no explicit baking in of like what different people can do what on a team, but people are exclusively going to train to serve one purpose.
Yeah, I think like soccer, as we call it, is like really a good
soccer.
example of this. You ever watch like kids play soccer?
Yeah, kids playing soccer is without the agential roles, and then professionals playing soccer is with the agential roles.
It's so funny. I'll just say this. Kids playing soccer is like one of the funniest visual experiences I think you can have outside of something that is purposefully trying to be funny, because it just looks like a bunch of like rats arguing over a peanut. Like they're just clustered around the ball. Like every single one of them is trying to kick it, like whether they're on your team or not. Like no one's playing defense. It's so funny.
It is pretty great. They talk about communication, allowed versus forbidden. If Michael Jordan gave people tips about basketball, that would be generally accepted. But if Kasparov gave tips about what your next move should be in chess, that would be frowned upon. That's why you can have like coaches or teammates coordinate in some games, but not in others. And it has to do with what they call skilled control, which is like, I guess, dexterity to a certain extent.
Yeah, basically it's like Michael Jordan can be like, this is how you shoot the basketball. You still ultimately have to make the throw.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
if you like physically have no ability or training there, like it's just not going to happen no matter how many great tips you have, like until you've worked up to it. But that's not the same in chess. Like Kasparov could literally just tell you the next move and you can make it. There's nothing. And so he would just be playing the game through you as if you're some sort of vessel.
Yeah.
And then they talk about Pandemic, which I think like has this problem in spades. And it's interesting, I suppose, that they don't mention the words alpha player problem, but that is something that describes what they've talked about, which is like, if you have perfect knowledge in a cooperative game like Pandemic, it can be an issue, perhaps, that someone starts directing all the other players' turns, and it's like, bro, you're just playing this solo, except we're also sitting here for some reason.
Yeah, I also made a note of that. They didn't mention alpha player problem. They didn't mention quarterbacking.
Yeah, like they specifically didn't hit those terms. Yeah.
But yeah, I suspect it's because this book was published in 2012. So like, even though these effects were already being observed, I don't think they were crystallized to a certain extent that the way they are nowadays. It's just fascinating that that's a term that evolved since.
Yeah, it's cool that the concept is here, even if those exact words were not either they weren't there or they didn't serve the purposes, perhaps, of the book and the linguistics that they were shooting for. I like the fact that they sort of mention ways that you can limit an expert's ability to play the game, so that like beginners, and especially this matters especially in either cooperative games or games where there's maybe just like a disparity between skill levels and stuff, which is time pressure being part of it, limits on communication itself, hidden information, and even role playing.
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
I mean, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening.
Why are you saying it like
especially... I don't know.
Were you doing like a Jim Carrey thing?
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Over and out.
Actually, wait, no, this is good. Can you do the whole thing like that?
Oh, yeah. And that's going to do it for this week's podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you especially to Michael, Tyler, Devon, and Josh of the Boise RainBeaus. Thank you to Bonehouse for letting us use your song Rot as the opening theme.
All right, who am I doing?
Christopher Walken? I don't know.
If you're loving the cast... Oh, shit,
what
that
is
was
that?
bad. If you're loving the cast, share it with a friend or on Reddit or on BGG. You can also reach
Okay,
out
that's
to
pretty
us
good.
directly at shelfstablecast@gmail.com. All of this and more will be, I'm not going to do the whole thing. All of this and more will be available in the show notes. If you like what we're doing and want to make more of it happen, consider subscribing to us on Patreon. You'll get access to bonus content and Discord. Tom, next week we're doing kind of a semi-special episode. I'm not going to say it's fully special because it's still just a regular one.
I think it's so perfect because chapter 2 of Characteristics of Games ends on page 69. And next week's episode is episode 69. And I think we're going to talk about things that are nice.
Nice. It's also going to be the last episode before I'm off for, baby duty. So if everything goes to shit while it's just Tom running the ship, at least we'll have ended on episode 69. Bye, everyone.
See you then.